Welcome back, YouTube. We're back here doing another nerd report, and another report has come across the table. In the cellular industry, which I pay attention to, uh, we've come across, I would say, a gigantic, monumental shift in the industry, and it's starting to happen under the 5G moniker where it's a total separate than what it was underneath the 4G. So let's get into it. And remember, subscribe to the channel, hit like on the video, and then stay for the story. This story is by Mike Dano from Light Reading, and I'll put the the link in the description. And I wanted to really talk about this one due to the fact that everything that's starting to happen now is kind of, I didn't know exactly what was going to start happening, but these are telltale signs of how the industry is starting to change. So 5G small cells are out, co-locations are in. So to give you an idea about how the cellular industry has been for roughly about the last, I say, 10, 15 years. I would say even going back as far as 2G, 3G, even 4G. Everybody kind of just did their own thing. Here in America, we don't believe in working together, period. But now that competition has come into play and one entity might have a better upper hand than the other entity, everybody's trying to figure out ways to save money, but also be able to still compete. So you run into the problem of, well, what happens if my competitors get a better spot for their cellular? I can't, you know, jump over top of them. I have to find another spot. And then what ends up happening is that a lot of municipalities, local governments don't like all these cell towers all over the place. So now they're starting to co-locate on the same cell towers. So going back to, like, let's say the transition from 3G to 4G. Well, you can sometimes even see the scars of that lack of competition even today, where you be driving down the road and you see two cell towers within, I would say, bird's eye view of each other. That's because lack of competition. Hey, they make their own cellular grid. Your competitor makes their own cellular grid. We don't care, but it's an eyesore to the people who, want their area to look kind of beautiful. Now, fast forward a couple more years, and now we come into 5G. So these cell towers still need to be put in place, but underneath the 5G moniker and this new banner, working together has seemed to be the move of choice. This is something that I didn't even know was going to come down the pipeline, but it makes a lot of sense, and that way you can kind of get on the same tower. A lot of these cell towers can hold multiple carriers. So the three major carriers here in the United States are AT&T, T-Mobile, and Verizon. So it only makes sense why put on three cellular towers around a town when you could just put one up and they all share the same tower, same resources. You don't have to run separate power lines to different towers. This is going to be probably what even U.S. Cellular is planning on doing. They're going to be a tower company where they're going to have a lot of co-locations. But it also changes the landscape for what Verizon set as a precedence underneath the 4G generation. When Verizon switched to 4G in the last, I say, 15 years, my time might be a little bit off, but roughly the change from 3G to 4G was kind of a violent change. If you had a 4G phone at the time, you were running 3G They were running a 3G network with a 4G data, and then when you made a phone call, it fell back to 3G. It was very bad. But Verizon, which took it a step further, and I kind of blame lack of competition for this problem, because Verizon didn't really look forward, and they kind of just plugged their finger into the hole of the dam and was like, we'll deal with this problem later. So they went and just started putting small cells everywhere that they had a higher market share in. You know, areas like my market has been predominantly been like a Sprint. It's turned into a T-Mobile. It's turned into a T-Mobile market. That they didn't heavily put small cells here in DC, because I don't think DC would even let them do it. But I've also traveled to Philadelphia, and in Philadelphia they have small cells all over the place. And I look at this article as being kind of a hard U-turn. You know, cellular antennas going on, macros cover a larger area than a small cell will. So I think that some people might look at small cells and putting a pole every 3-4 blocks as coverage. Not really. You kind of, I look at it like Verizon was hiding the fact that they didn't have enough capacity for their network, and they became real big real fast. Come on. I mean, who didn't see the commercials of, oh, can you hear me now? Good. Everybody wanted to be, hey, can you hear me now? So they gained a lot of customers. But in Verizon's success of gaining a lot of customers, they lacked the capacity to be able to handle those customers. So they had to take their network and split it across a larger area, and that's where you get small cells from. The way that small cells, for the most part, gets used and done is more along the lines of, hey, we got this little spot over here. We can't really get a macro to get into that little crevice. Let's put a small cell right here. It aids in the ability, but you know what? Let's put this on this pole here. Point the antenna directly into that hole. That alleyway or that street that nobody can get on, bam, you got coverage. But now, if you go to Philadelphia or maybe even some other cities, Verizon and AT&T mirrored Verizon in certain places. They went and just put small cells on any and every pole in a whole city. But at the same time, your competitor, who is taking years to try to get to this point, is now doing the same connectivity from macro towers, where you got thousands and thousands and thousands of small cells. Now your competitor is doing it from rooftops and spending less money. It always comes back around to the money, and this article is basically showing that the cellular industry is making a big U-turn from focusing on small cells for 5G and going straight for how can I say it? Going straight for the more cost-effective model, which is macro towers. So, the co-location push is driven for saving money. That's what it's basically designed around. It's so you can save more money. The amount of money that your competitor spends directly correlates to how much they get back. And so if you're putting down a lot of small cells, but your competitor is putting up macros, yes, you have a denser network, but you also are spending more per area versus one sector off of a macro tower. It's just the math doesn't work for you at a certain point. And at that point, your competitor is pulling away from you. I'm eager to see what a city like Philadelphia is going to start looking like in the 5G coming towards the end of. they might they might end up turning a lot of the small cells into just straight millimeter wave poles, which that's probably what Verizon is going to end up doing, still keeping the poles. The fiber's already ran, so it doesn't make any sense. But the issue with 5G is kind of like a hard reset that we're running into, and it's all about coverage. Coverage. That's all it's about right now. And that's the drive is about covering as much of the United States as you possibly can with your cellular signal that you can get away with. Small cells only cover a small area. Hence the reason why in the name it's called small cells. So, macro towers, full cell towers, we're talking about the tall boys, standing, 200 feet. Those big boys, those are the ones that we're going to be working on, especially rural America. When you get into the cities, there's going to be a lot more rooftop sites. But they are literally moving away from 5G small cells at this current time. Now, will they end up going back? Yes. I believe that they're probably going to end up going back as millimeter wave becomes a more viable option. You're starting to see T-Mobile gaining, fiber viability. So that will give them a leg up. They can deploy their own fiber as the technology starts maturing. But I'm curious to see what's going to end up happening. But right now in the 5G era, right now at the early stage, and we're basically 5 years in, with it being 2025 and T-Mobile closing on the deal in 2020, is coverage. Get your coverage out there. Get your antennas up. Get your capacity on air, no matter what. So let me know what you think. Let me know how you feel about this. Do you think that the direction that we're heading in is going to need to be more coverage and then we worry about capacity? Or are you a small cell person and you think that small cells is the best way of doing it? I mean, I would love to have the conversation with you in the comments, but let me know, and y'all have a good one.